Welcome back, listeners, to the Mindful Living podcast, where we dive deep into the art of intentional living and self discovery. Today, we are talking about fear. Yep, that thing that sneaks up on us, holds us back, and keeps us stuck in the comfort zone. But what if we could turn fear into fuel for growth and bold action? Well, to help me with this conversation, we have our guest today, Eric Simpson, who is a life coach and fearless adventurer who helps ambitious individuals break free from the shackles of fear, rewrite their life stories, and take bold steps toward living authentically. Now, Eric doesn't just talk about courage, he lives it, listeners. After 30 plus years of playing it safe and living the life others told him to live, Eric leapt into the unknown. He quit his corporate job, moved from the US to the UK, started his coaching business, and even jumped out of a plane 4 times on purpose. And today, Eric is here to share his journey of embracing discomfort, overcoming self doubt, and finding balance and purpose through mindfulness and intentional living. So, if you have ever felt stuck or let that fear stop you from chasing your big dreams, this conversation is definitely for you. So, everyone, get ready for a practical strategies, inspiring stories, and a healthy dose of courage. So, Eric, welcome to this show, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
It's an honor to be here with you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation together.
Great, great. So, Eric, you talk a lot about embracing fear rather than running from it. So, how does mindfulness and self awareness play a role here in viewing fear as a fuel for growth, rather than something to run away from?
Yeah, and it's really interesting because fear is often, like you mentioned in the intro, the thing that prevents people from moving forward. And so being able to shift that focus from, is your fear potentially inviting you into something bigger or an opportunity for growth or just a way to sort of challenge a belief system. Fear is, for me, and how I've started to see it, less of a roadblock and a hindrance and more of an opportunity to explore and be curious.
Hmm, lovely. Okay, now moving on to your journey, Eric. You went from a stable, cushy corporate job to becoming a life coach and also moving across not countries but continents. What was that moment that made you realize that yes, it was that time to take a leap of faith? And how did mindfulness help you navigate through such a huge transition?
It's such a great question. Moving and living in Europe has been
Mm-hmm.
a dream of mine for 15 years. And it always felt like the thing that was never going to be a possibility for me. I had a very restricted mindset around it. I didn't have a growth mindset about what type of opportunities or paths or avenues that I could take to make that dream a possibility. And so I think one of the things that kind of helped spark my ability to do this was honestly going skydiving. And it sounds kind of funny, but it was an opportunity for me to sort of face a fear that I had of heights. And,
Uh-huh.
and as safe as skydiving can be, actually test that fear and push myself beyond just my comfort zones.
Hmm.
And so at the beginning of this year in 2024, I started to reflect on, where I was in my life and doing some inventory of the dreams that I hadn't accomplished yet, and realized that I had talked other people into and helped coach them into achieving big things. And I realized it's time for me to do the same. So it was just sort of like I had a good self-awareness about who I was, my values, my dreams, the direction I wanted to head in life, and had the realization that I wasn't actively taking any steps to make those a reality.
Mm. Wow. Wow. Really, that's really inspiring. And that, something as adventurous, as skydiving, it was kind of, a test for you that how you can handle fear as something, as a catalyst for growth. So also, were there any specific tools or practices that you leaned on when, fear or doubt started to creep back in?
Yeah. So one of the things that has been really helpful for me, and I try to instill in anybody that I work with as a coach, is understanding yourself and your sense of core values, because they really are a good compass for the direction and tasks and activities to take in life. And so for me, a lot of my core values relate to adventure, risk taking, courage, and curiosity. And so the more that I can lean into those values, the more adventures I can take, the more risks I can take, the more I can just be curious, the more I can start to see when a fear comes up, how can I step into it in a way that is in aligned with myself, that isn't going to push me further than I am, really comfortable in taking.
Hmm. Hmm. Great. Also, intentional living and self-reflection, they played a big role in your journey, Eric. So how can someone start leveraging mindfulness to identify what truly matters to them and, also align their lives accordingly?
Yeah, I love this question. And it leads me to one of my favorite exercises that I use for not only myself, but for clients. And that's asking the question, wouldn't it be cool if?
Mm.
And it's a great way of getting to these bigger dreams, these bigger desires without putting this really harsh, like, I want, I need, I should sort of framework on it. And it just sort of lightens it up in a way that frees the mind to explore beyond the things that feel possible today. So, for me, like a lot of those things were, wouldn't it be cool if I lived in Europe and had a full coaching practice? And then it got in even bigger to, wouldn't it be cool if I was coaching these world famous musicians and lived in multiple continents and had multiple citizenships? And suddenly I found myself living in a different continent, in a different country, and having my coaching practice, and it's been amazing.
Mm. Also, from this, one question comes to my mind, and this is very, I think our listeners will relate to this. So often we do, let's say we're writing down, what if I am free and I can do this? We just write it down. We think in our mind, but planning and then executing or taking that action, that first step, it's a different ball game altogether. So how do you advise, for someone who is trying to take that first step to achieve what really matters for them?
It's such a good question. And it can be really challenging because I think a lot of it does come down to mindset
Yeah.
and sort of the mindfulness practice. And one of the ways that you framed it was, what if I am free? I
Mm.
think simply changing that to, I am free, and removing the question out of it can help build in your subconscious, build in your mind that I am already free. And then that removes some of those barriers, those subconscious barriers that potentially hold people back, that build in the fear, that build in the self-doubt, for you to then be able to be more curious, to explore new ways of being. And so I think really that's one of the first things is take away this what if, because what if leads to, in my experience, a lot of negative. What if this goes wrong? What if this doesn't work out? So just remove all of that and just say, I am, and then fill in the blank as if you already have it.
Mm. Wow, sounds exciting. And while embracing fear, it can push us to grow. But some would argue that fear exists to protect us. So how do we know when to lean into fear versus when it's a signal to step back and maybe reassess?
Yes, absolutely. You know, I talk a lot about jumping out of planes and moving halfway around the world and quitting jobs and starting businesses. A lot of things that people would consider very high risk, very fearful activities. And so I do want to acknowledge that I definitely have a higher risk tolerance than some other people. So first and foremost, it's not to say that it's risk and fear are one size fits all. Like you have to be able to understand your own limits and your own risk tolerance.
Mm.
But for me, there's a couple of steps that I work through. It's, first and foremost, understand that fear as an emotion hasn't really evolved from the time that our ancestors were, hunting for their prey and their food centuries and millennia ago. Fear was a protective device that kept them safe, kept them alive. But fear triggers the same way in our brains today for things like sending an email.
Mm-hmm.
It's very different. It's not a life and death situation, but our body and our mind process it in a very similar way. So understand that fear is trying to protect you, but the thing it's trying to protect you from is likely not life or death. So that's frame number one.
Okay.
But really, it's about assessing what the risk or the fear is in front of you. What is the worst that could potentially happen, but what is also the best case scenario? Really try and map that out. Understand what are the obstacles that are potentially in front of you. So if you're afraid to quit your job or transitioned into a new career or jump out of an airplane, whatever it really is, what are the obstacles? What are the fears? What are the things that you can see? Because understanding what's in front of you can really help you turn risk into calculated moves.
Okay.
And then really for me, it's about visualizing success. What is it going to feel like when you reach the other side? When you step through it, when you've done the steps? Because that can help you shift that fear into possibility.
Mm.
Finally, it's then break everything into smaller steps. So for the example of me moving around the world, like it started with me attending a free workshop. Very low risk, low low fear activity. But it was the first step that led to me hiring a coach that specializes in relocating people abroad,
Okay.
which opened me up then to the visa that I'm on and applying for the visa and then going through all the steps. And so each step became bigger and closer towards the end goal, but then each step also built the momentum and the courage to keep moving.
Mm. Makes sense. Makes sense. That's I think it's more of a mindful approach to take that big risk and execute it.
Right. Right. Because so many people see just the end result. They see the fact that I've moved halfway around the world and jumped out of planes, but that you don't see all of the steps, all of the fears, all of the risks that happen between the beginning of that journey and to the end of that journey.
Right. That's right. Great, great, Eric. Okay, so uh intentional living, and and another word I think which truly sums up your journey is resilience. Although it's such a buzzword, but you have lived it. So what practical strategies or activities you would recommend for building resilience and taking that bold action even when fear really feels overwhelming?
I think really what I just mapped out around assessing the risk, mapping the obstacles, visualizing the success, and then breaking it into smaller steps is the act of building resilience, specifically the smaller steps and actively moving forward, because resilience is built with taking action. Resilience is an outcome. It's similar to confidence. It's similar to clarity. These are all outcomes of taking actions. And it doesn't mean taking big, bold, courageous actions. It's about starting small. Take the free thing, listen to the podcast, buy the book, go to apply for a course or something like that. Small, simple, low cost, low barrier to entry steps is how you really begin to build resilience.
True, true. You know, uh, somewhere between this, there's a lot of external situations to navigate. Like societal or familial expectations,
Right.
and many people struggle with this. So, how did you learn to break free from those, shoulds and embrace a life that's true to you? And what advice would you give to listeners, who are facing similar struggles?
It's such a big part of this process because there are those expectations, especially in sort of family and friend groups, the groups that you're the most closely connected with. Like, I know with my own journey, I've had to go against many of the sort of expectations that, my family had for me. Uh, I don't think they ever saw me moving halfway around the world or, in their mind, starting a business is deemed very risky. When in reality, it's like I control everything. I can control how much comes in, how much goes out. And so I want to acknowledge and recognize that it is a big struggle. And it's one that I have definitely faced.
Mm.
But I think what has been really the most beneficial for me is having that deep understanding of who I am. So doing the deep inner work, understanding my core values, how I naturally show up in this world, how I naturally have strengths and weaknesses, the tasks that energize me, the tasks that drain me. Having a very detailed look into how I operate in this world gives me then a very solid foundation to be able to talk about why I am doing certain things,
Mm.
why moving around halfway around the world is the right move for me. And the thing that I learned, and it was you learn it a lot in sort of counseling and therapy, is you cannot control other people's actions or responses. And so understanding that even if you do all the deep inner work and you say all the right things and you have all the justifications, you might still face deep resistance from the outside, and you can't control that. So it's up to you then to decide how you respond. Do you give in to their resistance and just do what society and family and friends and peers expect you to do, going against what you want? Or do you
Mhm.
continue forward? It is your path and your choice then, and it's a very difficult path. I acknowledge that, and I don't know if there's really an easy way to face that or to approach that, but um, that's what I've found to make it easier is just having that deep understanding of self.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I also, agree with the same. It becomes really very, very tough emotionally and sometimes, physically also to manage and, uh, you know, make them understand or make them realize that, yes, I'm doing something which I wanted to do. And, I am aware, I'm self aware of the risks involved here. And I'm prepared for that. So it sometimes becomes very, very difficult to make them understand. Okay, great, great, Eric. And before we wrap up, mindfulness, it often teaches us to slow down, reflect, and be present. But bold action sometimes it requires moving fast and taking risks. So, do you ever see a contradiction between mindfulness and the act of leaping into the unknown?
No, I don't see a contradiction between the two. I think in order to go into and take big leaps into the unknown, you have to practice mindfulness. So for me, I spend 10 minutes every single morning in meditation and repeating back affirmations and mantras to myself to ground me in the day and make sure that I am of clean, sound mind so that I can move forward into whatever big leap there is. Because without that sort of sense of grounding and mindfulness and clarity, you can start to move into reckless or even fearless. And I say fearless as a sense of like you have removed all sense of fear. And I don't see that as a good thing because I do see fear as a way to sort of check you.
Correct, correct. Great, great, Eric. So, if our listeners they want to connect with you and explore more of about your journey and the resources you are providing, the expertise, the coaching, how they can do that.
Yeah, my the best way is through my website, ericsimpsoncoaching.com. I've got some free resources that people can dive into. There's an assessment that they can take and blog articles that they can read, as well as ways that they can connect with me via social media or via email. I'm always open to having conversations with people to see if and how I can support them and what that looks like.
Lovely. Well, we'll have all the details mentioned in the show notes there for our listeners. And Eric, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your powerful journey of courage, mindfulness, yet bold living. And you have really shown us that fear isn't the enemy. It's often a kind of a doorway to growth, authenticity, and I think alignment with what truly matters. So thank you so much for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a real honor and a pleasure, and I look forward to how I can help support people in the future.
Great, great. And listeners, for those of all you are listening to this, if you are feeling stuck, let this be a reminder. Mindfulness can help you listen to yourself, but it's courage that helps you take action. So, to connect with Eric and learn more about his coaching, check out the show notes along with this episode. And as always, thank you to all of you for tuning into the Mindful Living podcast. If today's conversation inspired you, share it with someone who might need a little push to break free from fear. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a review for us, and join us for such mindful conversations only on the Mindful Living. Until then, stay bold, stay present, and stay mindful. Thank you.